Thank you all for your patience. We're going to start our 6:30 regular city council meeting. We didn't have a closed session, so we don't have to come out of that. We're going to start with a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you very much. We are now going to have, are there any announcements? Yes.
I've been asked to announce that the delegation from Besançon, our sister city in France, will be arriving in Charlottesville on Friday, April 12th, and will stay through Wednesday, April 17th. It's the first official municipal exchange between Besançon and Charlottesville since 2018. And as part of the delegation visit, the Sister Cities Commission in Charlottesville is hosting 3 events open to the public. And everyone is invited to attend. One is a concert Sunday afternoon from 4 to 6 p.m., April 14th, Les Amitiés Musicales. It'll be at Grisham Hall Auditorium in St. Anne's Belfield on Ivy Road. Then on Monday, April 15th from 12 to 2, Sister Revolutions podcast launch at Jefferson Hall, otherwise known as Hotel C on the UVA grounds. And then on Tuesday, April 16th, from 6 to 7:30, at the Create Gallery at In Bio in the Silk Mills on Harris Street, a public event with the Besançon delegation to recognize the 20th anniversary of the signing of our joint proclamation of friendship. The festivities will include food, music, and a special presentation about Besançon prepared by the delegation. All are welcome.
Okay. And I have one that we got literally a minute ago.
Yes.
But there will be a community celebration honoring the parents of the Charlottesville 12 at Carver Rec Center at 1 p.m. on Saturday, April 13th. The Charlottesville 12 are the first 12 African-American students to attend Charlottesville's previously segregated public schools. Integration was highly resisted, and it took a judicial order for the students to walk safely through the doors and begin their studies. There will be honors and tributes to the Charlottesville 12 parents and students, musical performances, and refreshments courtesy of the Ebony Club, sponsored by Wegmans and with Charlottesville Parks and Recreation as a partner as well. Again, that will be Saturday, April 13th at 1 p.m. at Carver Rec Center.
Any other announcements? We have one proclamation.
April 2nd through 8th, 2024 is Charlottesville Dark Sky Week. Whereas International Dark Sky Week is a worldwide celebration of the dark and natural night, and whereas the aesthetic beauty and wonder of a natural night sky is a shared heritage of all humankind, the experience of standing beneath a starry night sky inspires feelings of wonder and awe and encourages a growing interest in science and nature. And whereas 80% of the world's population, including many people in Charlottesville, lives under a dome of light pollution, which is excessive artificial lighting at night that disrupts natural darkness, and may never experience the visual wonder or ecological and health benefits of living under a dark sky. And whereas scientists link light pollution to global insect decline, the death of millions of migrating birds, increased carbon emissions, and disease, and whereas light pollution represents roughly $3 billion per year of wasted energy in the United States and contributes to diminished energy security. And whereas the Dark Skies Piedmont Group was formed in 2023 to an enthusiastic response from the city of Charlottesville and surrounding counties, raising awareness of light pollution and providing education, resources, and solutions to encourage the protection of and enjoyment of dark skies and responsible outdoor lighting. Now, therefore, the Charlottesville City Council proclaims the week of April 2nd through 8th, 2024 as Dark Sky Week, and we ask residents to observe and ponder upon this important week and to join in raising awareness and support for protecting our dark sky resources on this week and throughout the year.
Okay, is Christine Putnam, is she here? Oh. You can take that.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Do we have a minute to
Yes.
say a couple words?
Well, my name's Peggy Cornett, and I'm a resident of Charlottesville in the Belmont area. And on behalf of the Piedmont Dark Skies Group, the astronomers, naturalists, lighting specialists, and members of local environmental groups, we want to thank you for your support in addressing light pollution by declaring Charlottesville International Dark Sky Week, April 2nd through the 8th, 2024. As you just said, light pollution is causing nights to become almost 10% brighter every year. The disappearing darkness not only limits our view of the stars, but it also has serious implications for the health of all living things on the planet. For billions of years, all biological processes have evolved with the Earth's predictable rhythm of night and day. It is encoded in our DNA. Lighting up the night disrupts this predictable cycle. In addition, excessive outdoor lighting is disorienting and often fatal for migrating birds and nocturnal flying insects. International Dark Sky Week sits in the middle of the North American bird migration period. We hope that the City of Charlottesville will enforce its new lighting ordinance and take steps to further address light pollution, and that our fellow citizens will take the simple action of turning off all lights which do not serve a clear purpose. We invite everyone to step outside at night and look into the sky to connect with the larger universe. We are grateful for this proclamation, which brings the issue of light pollution to the attention of Charlottesville residents. We can all do something to reduce useful overlighting. And if you must leave a light on in front of your house all night, please consider using a yellow bug light instead of the white lights that a lot of people have on their front porches. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we're now at the point for community matters. There are 8 pre-registered speakers, leaving 8 slots for additional speakers on community matters. If the first one of the first 8 speakers is absent, then the person on the wait list will take that slot. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. We'll open the floor. Please give your name and your residence, please. The first speaker I have is Andrew Shelton.
Hi, I'm Andrew Shelton. I'm currently a resident of Albemarle County, but just barely. I've lived in Charlottesville or in the near vicinity for my entire life. I spend a great deal of time in and around the city during my day, so I definitely feel like I have a part to play here. I'm here to speak against the potential installation of the flock cameras, and I believe that I have a somewhat different objection to this than much of what I've seen and read so far. I was following along with the chief's presentation earlier and appreciated that. But a lot of the focus that I'm seeing is on the potential civil rights abuse from the state against, people that might be captured by the cameras. And while I in no way, I find that to be a very serious potential, my broader concern is more about the potential for abuse from within the company itself. We know very little about their overall business plan. It currently appears that they're operating off of a large infusion of venture capital, at least $300 million in the last few years. I believe their current valuation is something on the order of $1 billion. And it's very difficult for me to look at this company that is riding on venture capital currently and has been making very strong inroads into municipalities across the country and not wonder what their ultimate plan is for monetizing the entire thing. Obviously, I understand that they'll be charging, maintenance fees and that sort of thing, but nothing that I've seen really makes it look to me like the actual business model is, provide this service to the communities that they're going to be installed in. I am concerned that they might be following a broader tech model where the goal is to basically get your installation of the data collection points and then monetize that data down the line. I am not convinced that that wouldn't be on the table, despite their many assurances about how this data will be protected from abuse of, say, individual police officers, that sort of thing. I'm concerned that we're effectively offering them free rein to train whatever their models are on the data we'll be giving them if they get put in place. And at a minimum, I would really love if y'all would get some stronger assurances from them about how they would internally be using the data, what their long-term plans are for that. It also ties in with the question that I appreciated being asked earlier about where the funding through the Police Foundation is coming from. Because my understanding is that the fee is something on the order of $300,000 for the next few years, whereas the Police Foundation's budget is only about $150K per year. So it really looks to me like there was an infusion of cash that was particularly for this project. And I'd love to know where that came from. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rose Buckaloo.
Hi, my name is Rose, and I live near Washington Park here in Charlottesville, and I've come tonight to speak on two issues, FLOC and the ceasefire resolution. So I'm a sociologist and a criminologist. I teach and research on issues of crime, criminalization, race, and racism. And I want to share with you that there is no peer-reviewed research to suggest that automatic license plate readers lower crime rates. I've spent time researching this topic, and I have access to academic databases, research databases, and there is no peer-reviewed research suggesting ALPRs lower crime rates. Peer-reviewed research undergoes rigorous scrutiny from relevant experts before it can be published. Now, there is research that corporations like FLOC have paid for that overstate the effectiveness of ALPRs and other technologies. But that research is not peer-reviewed. It's the same as letting a kid grade their homework. You know, no matter what they do, they're going to give themselves an A+. What you do find in the research literature on ALPRs is a host of scholars warning us on the dangers of these technologies. City council members, you are concerned with crime and gun violence. In Charlottesville, it's a complicated problem, and FLOC emerges as a seemingly straightforward and smart solution, one that looks unbiased and accurate, but it is not. Scholars, in particular black and brown scholars, have been ringing the alarm on ALPRs, calling attention to how the technology infringes on our privacy and also exacerbates racial and class inequalities. Say no to FLOC. There's no evidence that it will make Charlottesville safer. We do not need a pilot study. Moving on to the ceasefire resolution. Sorry about that. So today marks day 178 of Israel's war on Gaza. It's also the second time that we've asked you to consider voting to approve a ceasefire resolution. It's time that Charlottesville stands with the other 100 cities that have called for a ceasefire. Today, Israel withdrew its military from a 2-week-long raid on Al-Shifa Hospital Complex in Gaza. Multiple buildings have been burned down. Those that are left up are charred and black. Gaza's largest hospital was barely surviving, but now it is out of service. People are trying to salvage what they can. Doctors and nurses have been killed and arrested. Hundreds of bodies have been found inside and around the complex. All that is left is rubble and dead bodies. The hospital was known as the House of Healing. It was referred to as the beating heart of Gaza. It's day 178 of Israel's war on Gaza, and today is the day that Charlottesville City Council votes to approve a ceasefire resolution. What more devastation and human suffering do we need to witness before we are moved to make this act, this largely symbolic act? I ask that you stand with your constituents, your neighbors, your friends, and colleagues and approve the ceasefire resolution today.
Thank you. The next speaker is Kristen Saikas. The next speaker is Kristen Saikas.
Good evening. Mayor Wade, council members, my name is Kristen Saikas. I live in the Locust Grove neighborhood in Charlottesville, and I served on the Charlottesville City Council for 8 years. I don't envy you any of it, although I did enjoy it. I'm here to add my voice to those calling for the Charlottesville City Council to join the national movement to urge our federal government to demand immediate ceasefire in Gaza and the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. The United States and Israel have always been close friends and allies, but you can't turn your back when your friend is doing something terrible. Israel's bombardment of innocent civilians in Gaza is terrible, and it must stop. It is in violation of international law and goes against everything our nation says it stands for. As a close ally of Israel, a call from the United States for ceasefire could save countless lives and ease unwarranted human suffering. By joining with more than 100 city councils and other local governments across our nation, you will be raising our voices as our representatives to call for an immediate ceasefire in our name. The inclusion of Charlottesville among these local government resolutions will be a powerful statement that hate and violence must not win. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. The next speaker is Laura Goldblatt.
Good evening. My name is Laura Goldblatt, and I'm a Jewish resident who lives on Druid Avenue in Belmont. I grew up in New Jersey attending a synagogue that Albert Einstein helped to found after refusing to work on the Manhattan Project due to his opposition to creating weapons of mass destruction. I think there's much to learn from Einstein's example, a refugee from Germany living in the United States explicitly on the condition that he comply with the U.S. government's demands, defying those demands because they contravened his most foundational principles. In hearing and telling this story, we learn an old and perpetual truth, that imperiling a group of people, even under the most extreme of conditions, never leads to any real or lasting safety. I am here today to urge you to find the courage to join with over 100 municipalities across the U.S. to demand an end to Israel's genocidal war on Palestine, to find the courage and clarity to use your voice to say that genocide and apartheid will never make any group of people safe. And I want to say that to the Jewish members of my community. We will never be safe with genocide and apartheid. I imagine that at least some of you agree with an end to the war and that your reluctance to pass a resolution is really about a feeling that calling for a ceasefire is beyond local government's purview. I disagree for several reasons. In targeting an entire population in its war, the Israeli army and government is committing war crimes, and in funding those war crimes, the United States government is a willing accomplice to them. Who holds the United States accountable for such crimes except for its populace, working through representative bodies such as City Council? Further, the majority of likely voters across the political spectrum favor a ceasefire, according to recent polling. Despite this popular dissent, the federal government continues to allocate more funding to Israel's genocidal war, over $13 billion just last week. In passing a ceasefire resolution, you will demonstrate that local governments have an important role to play in our democratic process by magnifying that populist demand and bringing our voices closer to federal policymakers. Indeed, we are seeing the power of grassroots solidarity with Palestine right now. But I am also here because Israel's war on Gaza and Palestine endangers our city. Charlottesville faces several overlapping public safety, racial, and environmental crises. I know this not least as a commissioner for the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority, where I have served for 5 years. And we know the solution to these crises: deeply affordable housing, especially for people making 0 to 30% AMI, excellent and well-funded healthcare, dynamic and well-resourced school, clean air and water, and collective solutions to climate change that privilege those already facing its worst effects. Instead of funding these solutions, including the Section 202 funding for the elderly, the Healthy Homes Initiatives, and Section 811 housing for persons with disabilities that was cut in HUD's budget last week that we rely on, we fund a genocidal war that imperils our Palestinian, Arab, Muslim, Middle Eastern, and Jewish communities, among others. And rather than funding crime prevention, we consider a tool of surveillance capitalism, FLOC, that will only drive more racial and economic inequality in our city. I'm asking you to vote no to war, and in doing so, I ask you to say yes to your citizens. Say yes to the hard work of racial justice, truth and reconciliation, and environmental and community healing. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. The next speaker is David Swanson. David Swanson.
Thank you. David Swanson, Gillespie Avenue. I want to thank this council for reconsidering a resolution in support of a ceasefire in Palestine. Rare is the government that will listen to people at all, much less listen to them more than once. I want to thank members of this council for taking care with their duties and seeking to protect this city from the sort of deadly Nazi rally we saw here several years ago. But I want to thank them even more for reconsidering whether silence in the face of genocide is really the best way to protect us. And by us, I mean all living things on earth. If someday I am asked, what did you do during the second Nakba, Grandpa? I'd like to be able to say that not only I, but all of us did what we were capable of to end it, that we went even beyond what was perfectly comfortable, that we were willing to be called names and worse, but that we did not go silent. And that we did not ask anyone else to go silent, but invited them to friendly discussions and debates. But we cannot wait to speak against mass murder until every last person has understood what's happening, even people who own televisions. We cannot dismiss as a radical policy position simple compliance with the law, including the numerous laws that forbid sending weapons to nations engaged in committing crimes with those weapons. We cannot normalize ignoring the orders of the World Court and the United Nations. And yet, as we've made clear for weeks, we aren't even asking this council to support compliance with the law on arms shipments. We're asking it merely to endorse what many of those supporting the arms shipments themselves have long claimed to already endorse, a ceasefire. If I were constantly shooting guns at my neighbor's house, would you praise me for throwing some crackers through the window too? Or would you stop bringing me bullets? All we are asking is that while you keep bringing me bullets, you mention that it would be good if I were to knock it off. This isn't asking much. I thank you very, very much for reconsidering. My remaining 45 seconds. If you want a resolution passed, could you please stand up? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Next speaker is Don Gathers. Don Gathers.
Good evening, Don Gathers, city resident. Let me start by saying that I actually like each of you. Now, I haven't been able to say that about past councils, which is why it's so troubling to understand why three of you, and I'm speaking specifically to Mayor Wade, Vice Mayor Pinkston, and former Mayor Snook, would vote against any resolution that would seek a ceasefire to a conflict. We ourselves here in Charlottesville were under attack at war some 6.5 years ago. At that time, clergy and community leaders put out a call seeking assistance to what we expected to happen that day, that weekend, that summer. And persons from all across the country responded to our community, our cry for help, in a resounding way. Now, when we were given the opportunity to reciprocate to people in need, we declined to do so. Let me remind you once again of the words penned by Pastor Martin Niemöller. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. While this resolution is largely a symbolic gesture, we would join in the over 100 U.S. cities, as well as the United Nations, that have called for the end to this senseless continued tragedy. It would signal that we feel that the war, whoever the aggressor is wrong and not in keeping with our values of a caring community. I urge you to reconsider your votes, and remember that several years ago when we had councilors seated in those same chairs, they unconsciously voted against removing the Confederate statues of hate that littered the downtown area. I ask you to remember how tragically that ended. We have an opportunity here and now to do the right thing. As recently as 2022, our country sent over $3 billion in aid to Israel. Presently, there's a bill in Congress to send some $14 billion more in aid. In one of his most endearing speeches, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stated, "I come to say to you this afternoon, however difficult the moment, however frustrating the hour, it will not be long, because truth crushed to earth will rise again. How long? Not long, because no lie can live forever. How long? Not long, because you shall reap what you sow. How long? Not long. Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet the scaffold, sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. How long? Not long, because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Do what you know is right, not what's popular." And I must say, please vote against FLOC. We've got more than enough black people being arrested unnecessarily already.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jake Weiner. Jake Weiner.
Hi, councilors. Jake Weiner. I live by Jackson Via, and I'm here in support of a ceasefire. But you've heard from me. Honestly, you've heard from most of the people in this room already. I know that some of you are concerned about a limiting principle. How do you stop this type of foreign policy from becoming city business? And there's a really easy answer to that. The people in this room are your limiting principle. If you have over 1,000 signatures on a petition, that is the issue you need to consider. If you have a room packed with supporters, that is the issue you need to consider. You don't have to overthink it. It's as simple as that. People are here, and you're democratically elected. So I think the only question left is, will each of you do the right thing tonight? All right, I got that out of the way. So speaking of the right thing is not to digitally gate our city with license plate readers. I'm a lawyer, and I specialize in privacy and civil rights. I study the impact of advanced surveillance technologies like ALPRs at the Electronic Privacy Information Center in Washington, D.C. This tech is deeply harmful, and Flock is a known bad actor in this space. They lie about the effectiveness of their technology, they buy off academics to push bad science, and they use private citizens and HOAs to spread their cameras without any public oversight and then give police free access. I urge you to read Joseph Cox's coverage on Flock in 404 Media and in Vice before that. It is deeply insightful. He is the best tech journalist today, and you're not going to learn more about Flock than you will from Joseph Cox. License plate readers surveil everyone, and they're a risk to everyone because these things make mistakes. You're not going to hear this from Flock, but every real-world test of a license plate reader system has shown between a 10% and a 30% error rate. That's a lot of errors. And these mistakes come down hardest on our poorest and our most marginalized neighbors. On our black and brown neighbors, on our immigrant neighbors. These are the people who a traffic stop is not just an unpleasant experience, it is a life or death moment. This is not tech that makes our city safer. It is not solving murders. It is just the further criminalization of poverty. It means that every missed court fee, every petty misdemeanor becomes a police stop. And this same technology chills free speech. It stops protest. It restricts reproductive rights, not just for us in this city, but for anyone who travels here from out of state. If you are coming to Virginia because it is safe to get an abortion and you drive past a Flock license plate reader, there is a chance that police in another state will get access to that data. That is deeply concerning. And finally, as an expert in privacy, I just got to tell you, whatever promises Flock makes to you, every database is eventually breached. Every system has a leak. There is always someone who will sell access to this. We've seen it across the country, and it's going to happen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Chris Kaiser. Chris Kaiser.
My name is Chris Kaiser. I am the policy director for the ACLU of Virginia, and I also live in Belmont. I'm here today joined by colleagues from the Legal Aid Justice Center as well as Justice Forward Virginia to voice some concerns about the proposed pilot with Flock Safety. Earlier today, you received a letter from our organizations detailing our questions and concerns, which I've also just provided in hard copy. To be clear, just up top, we don't dispute that there might be some positive use cases for this technology in our community, although I will note there are some serious questions about Flock's crime prevention statistics that are worth closer scrutiny. But our concern today really revolves around the lack of clarity about what laws, regulations, or even contract provisions would regulate this technology and how. I was happy to learn tonight that there is a CPD policy in draft, although I don't think anybody's really seen that, and the devil is in the details like anything else. So, some of the ideas we heard earlier today sound fine, but at the same time, some of those are really just functions about limitations on the technology itself. Or
Chris, I'm sorry, can you hold for 1 second? There's some seats available. If everyone can kind of squeeze in, so the individuals that are in the back standing up, they can have a place to stand. We don't want to overfill this place. So please, Move over so people can sit down. I'm sorry, Mr. Kaiser. So, oh yeah, okay. We forgot to do the timer.
Take the extra time.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah. No, that's fine. Good. We can squeeze in. I think we got some more seats. We got 2 here. Please find a seat. We got some over here in the back that's standing up. Please, so we can continue on. Please find a seat. Please. Sir, some seats here. There's one here. There's one in the back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I was saying, I think that we heard some decent ideas in the proposed CPD policy earlier. Happy to hear there is something in draft, but we really haven't seen that in writing, and so it's really hard to evaluate how much protection that's going to provide. I will say that some of the ideas we heard about limiting the scope of the technology really just come down to the capability of the technology itself, or just decisions that the private vendor has made about what they want the technology to do. And both of those things can change very easily in the very near future as we go forward. One reason that the devil is in the details so strongly with this particular issue is that under Virginia code, under the municipal code, there's absolutely no regulation whatsoever about how to use or not use this technology. And so it all comes down to what decisions are made in this body. As you review the draft policy and any other regulations, there are a lot of really detailed questions that we would like you to consider, including the following. Can officers download ALPR data for any type of offense at all, or only some? We heard some comments about legitimate law enforcement uses only, but that is not defined in code anywhere. So what does that mean exactly? What policies govern individual officers' retention of data? Should they access and download it, contrasted with FLOC's proposed 7-day retention period? Notwithstanding the fact that this is meant only to be shared with Virginia law enforcement agencies, what about other agencies, federal immigration agencies, for example, that are located within Virginia? Is that spoken to at all? In addition, will ALPR data be preserved in the event that it's at issue in a criminal proceeding or an appeal? If so, what would trigger that preservation and for how long? And finally, does the city have sufficient in-house technical expertise and resources to really perform a robust independent audit? These are not comprehensive questions, but I want to illustrate just how detailed and complex this issue gets. We've outlined a bunch of other questions in the letter that we provided to you. I'll close by saying that a lot of those questions are relevant to any kind of surveillance technology, but in the context of ALPRs in particular, it's especially important because the enormous reach and capability of this technology really can't be overstated. We know that it's only meant to track vehicles and license plate numbers right now, but you heard earlier that it's already capable of tracking other characteristics of vehicles. In the very near future, updates could be uploaded to those devices to try to track other characteristics. Anomaly detection driven by AI. Things that are right around the corner. We would want to have guardrails in place on the front end, not on the back end. So at minimum, it's just our position that before moving forward with any kind of surveillance technology rollout, really take a close look at all these questions and don't give CPD a blank check just to use this technology writ large. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that was the end of those pre-registered to speak. We now have slots for 8 people, speakers to speak. And again, the same guidelines, 3 minutes, give your name and your residence. Sir?
I'm Dan Alexander, Rabbi Emeritus of Congregation Beth Israel. I'm a resident of Albemarle County. Although its concerns are, in my view, far outside the purview of City Council, since the ceasefire resolution is again on the agenda, I offer my view that the resolution is one-sided, misguided, and therefore ought to be rejected. I wish it were true that the immediate and sustained ceasefire called for by the resolution would end violence for Israelis and Palestinians, because I certainly hope and pray for an end to that violence. And with every person of decency, I'm deeply saddened by the suffering and killing of innocent Gazans, even as I was shaken to my core by the October 7th massacre executed by Hamas terrorists against innocent Israeli civilians, by the raping of women and men, by their maiming of the bodies of slaughtered victims, by their brazen abduction of hostages,
Please.
Let him speak. Let him speak.
including babies and the elderly, and by their joyfully posting
Please.
videos of their barbaric deeds. Whereas I support the Biden administration's increased pressure on Israel to prioritize the humanitarian crisis facing Gazan non-combatants, I also take Hamas leaders at their word when they repeatedly promise to persist in carrying out the genocidal aims encoded in their founding charter, the aim of destroying Israel and murdering Jews. And if pursuing this aim means endangering the lives of Palestinians by embedding their military installations in, around, and under hospitals, schools, mosques, and residential neighborhoods, well, we have observed how little the leaders of Hamas really care about the Palestinian people whose lives they intentionally endanger and whose deaths they delight in weaponizing. Wittingly or unwittingly, those who promote resolutions like the one before Council today partake of an ideology which opposes the very existence of the one stable democracy in the Middle East, which also happens to be the only sovereign Jewish nation
Please.
anywhere. By calling for an immediate and sustained ceasefire, and by opposing the American military aid Israel requires to defend itself against its enemies, including the Iranian proxies Hamas and Hezbollah, those who support this resolution are in effect aiding and abetting Hamas. If permitted to reconstitute as the governing force in Gaza, Hamas would do nothing to enhance the welfare of the suffering Gazans and would instead perpetuate, not end, violence for both Israelis and Palestinians. And by the way, I respect all of you and would encourage everybody to accord you with the respect you all deserve.
Thank you.
And I will, whether you agree with me or not.
Thank you. The next speaker, Harold, did you want to speak?
Yeah, me?
Yeah.
So I had a prepared speech ready about Flock and the awful things that they do, but I think City Council already made their mind up, which is trash can for me. But I'm not here to assault anybody. I'm actually going to take this time to thank the people who've been helping me through this log of fakeness when it comes to trying to dismantle the criminal justice system. Before I do that, though, I'm going to thank my wife for allowing me to be who I am by giving me, by being my biggest critic and my biggest supporter. So these are the people who I respect, and thank you for being here with me. Dee Dee Gilmore, Trey Henley, Frank, Earl, all the FAR interns, right? These people are always there giving me encouragement to continue to come talk to y'all about the things that is happening in our community that y'all are ignoring, right? I want to thank all the LAJC folks, because y'all the ones who really helped me GSD. And for those who don't know what GSD is, it depends on where you at. Get something done or get something done, right? But I'm going to tell you, it's been really hard the last 4 weeks coming to the city council meeting, fighting against the remodeling of a jail, right? Fighting against over-surveilling in my community. But we have people who don't really, it's really not affecting them, right? Instead of putting cameras in there, find some money to help these kids holistically get out of this poverty. But no, we want to throw things that to make everything feel like, oh, we're doing the right thing. I'm really passionate about it because I am tired of coming here begging people to help my people. I thank y'all so much. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you. Another speaker?
Good evening. My name is Beth McKinney, and I'm here to speak about the ceasefire resolution, which has once again been brought to this council. Several months ago, one of my students asked for permission to be absent because some of her family members in Gaza had been killed, and she wanted to be with her remaining family here in the U.S. At that time, I wrote to our elected officials at the national level, President Biden, Senators Kaine and Warner, and Bob Good. My letter at that time did not advocate for any specific policy measures. It simply asked for their words as leaders. How would they respond to my student? What would they say to her, knowing that our tax dollars were partially responsible for the deaths of her loved ones? My student felt the need to tell me that one of these family members was an infant, perhaps because she did not believe that the deaths of her family members would immediately be recognized as grievable. Palestinian lives and identities are so often erased in our media ecosystem, after all. Despite the fact that the majority of people living in Gaza are children under the age of 15, the Palestinian and the American public imagination does not reflect this reality. My student made a bid for my empathy by telling me the age of her dead relative. I relayed that plea for empathy to the aforementioned leaders of this country. The responses I received from our elected officials were all off-topic form letters that did not address the question I asked. No word of leadership or encouragement from me as a public employee, no modeling of the kind of language that would be appropriate to use. I believe that a permanent ceasefire is necessary to protect the lives of everyone living in Palestine and Israel. I also personally believe that the end of apartheid and occupation would protect people that I care about, and that until a real and fair peace agreement is reached, the people in my life who are Palestinian will not be safe, nor will their families. I hope that once this resolution is passed, this community can work to concretely address the ways in which we are materially implicated in violence and oppression. I hope that in the near future we can disentangle the ways we are complicit in all this death. But even the meekest call for empathy has been unheeded by my elected officials at the national level. So while I ultimately have higher hopes for what justice looks like in Israel-Palestine, all I am asking for tonight is that this council amplify my voice in calling for a lasting ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jessica. I live near downtown Charlottesville. I would like to thank the council members for once again hearing the ceasefire resolution. And I would also like to thank the Charlottesville Jewish Collective for putting together this resolution. I know this is a very difficult decision, but here are the facts. The facts are that 30,000 people have been killed. Half of them are children. Those children are not part of Hamas. Most of the people killed were not part of Hamas. Passing this ceasefire resolution does not say that you do not have sympathies for the victims who were killed in the horrible October 7th attacks. I have sympathies for them. I think we all, as human beings, have sympathies for them. However, there has been disinformation put into the press, such as the beheading of babies that was debunked, and yet there was not any major effort to spread that information. And much of this information has been put forward not out of love for the Israeli people, but out of hate for the Palestinians, to demonize them, to dehumanize them. And we heard all this rhetoric before. How quickly Americans forget, right? We heard all this rhetoric in the, back 20 years ago, after 9/11, back when we had to attack Iraq, right? With all this rhetoric of you're either with us or against us. You either support the terrorists or you don't. And then it was found that we didn't need to go over there, that they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. And in America's wars against terror, since 9/11, over 3 million people have been killed. most of them innocent, by our own military. So I just ask you today to consider the facts, to consider what you hope you did in the future, what you can tell your children that you did in the future, that you had courage to stand against international war crimes. The majority of the world came together at the UN to say that there needs to be a ceasefire. So this is not a fringe view. This is not a minority view. This is the view of 100 cities in America to add our voices to morality and decency and a call to an end of collective punishment against a population which is defined as genocide, written in the Genocide Convention by Raphael Lemkin, a survivor of genocide himself. I don't think he'd be pleased about what's going on right now. And I hope that Israel and the Palestinians can resolve their differences. I hope and I pray that there's peace in the region. I hope and pray that Palestinians and Israelis can live together in peace and brotherhood. But we just need to look at the facts and say that it's wrong to contribute our tax dollars to killing to engaging in collective punishment against a population. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Katz. This is a very hard issue, and I commend the council for, as has been said, listening to this not once but twice, for putting it on the agenda again, and for reconsidering what I believe was a mistaken vote 2 weeks ago. I'm going to speak a little bit of Hebrew with the permission of the crowd here. Im ein ani li mili, urshe'ani le'atzmi ma'ani. V'im lo achshav ematai. If I am not for myself, then who will be for me? And if I'm only for myself, then what am I? And if not now, when? Those are words that have guided me through my life as a Jew. They are a core to my Jewish being. I'm a member of Rabbi Dan's congregation, and I have great respect for him. And I'm just for myself, I wish he would have been able to speak without interruption. I understand that tensions are high here and that emotions are running high. I think that everybody in this room, regardless of how they feel about this particular resolution, shares a dream of people being able to live in peace and harmony and prosperity. And my feeling as a Jew, as a journalist, as somebody who has covered, who has reported from the ground in Israel and Palestine, including during the Second Intifada, this war, this genocide is not making anyone safer. And this is a moment of critical importance. The Netanyahu government is, as we speak, still considering going forward with their mobilization into Rafah, the last refuge of 1 million people, over 1 million people who have fled their homes across the Gaza Strip. Today, there's been a significant escalation with another bombing in Syria. These resolutions, including the resolution that is in front of you, it is symbolic, but it is a very important symbol. And it is a symbol that has been adopted by over 100 cities across the country. Over 100 city and municipal councils have felt that it is their job, and it is making a difference. We are moving the administration. We are seeing progress even at the highest levels of international politics in the UN Security Council. It matters. Our voices matter. And I believe that this is the moment to show that if we are not for ourselves, then who will be for us? But also, if we are only for ourselves, then what are we? Our liberations are linked. Our futures are linked. We should not be surveilling members of our community who don't need extra surveillance. We should not be condemning to the grave people who deserve to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker from over here.
Thank you.
My name is Karen Mann. I am a resident of Fluvanna, but I'm the pastor of Sojourners United Church of Christ here in Charlottesville. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Our church council at Sojourners is one of the faith-based organizations that supported this petition for a ceasefire resolution. Our church council felt really strongly that it was important for us to support this resolution. We are horrified by the violence and genocide happening in Gaza and join our voices with others calling for an immediate ceasefire. And our denomination, the United Church of Christ, has long supported and spoken out for an end to the apartheid in Palestine. Tonight, I'm speaking for myself, not as a pastor, but just as a decent human being and a citizen of the greater Charlottesville community. I cannot look away from or be silent in the face of the genocide happening in Palestine. This past week was a convergence of holy days for Jews, Muslims, and Christians, but even as we celebrated our holy days, we were confronted with the pain of war and conflict all over our world, but especially in Palestine. All of us desire to live in peace and see peace flourish in our world, and we cannot look away. Please do not look away. We must join our voices together, lamenting and denouncing the hatred, violence, and dehumanization against our neighbors, and calling for the restoration of dignity, wholeness, and flourishing for all peoples. The violence, mass displacement, and starvation inflicted in Palestine today is a matter of moral urgency. A ceasefire is an essential yet minimal requirement for peace. An immediate and permanent ceasefire must be accompanied by unfettered and urgent delivery of humanitarian aid and medical supplies and protection of the population, particularly of the tens of thousands of children that are in harm's way. Counselors, I urge you to join Charlottesville's voice with those of millions around the world calling for a permanent ceasefire. No matter how big or small our voice, it is imperative that we speak clearly against injustice whenever we witness it, especially when our government is complicit in enabling and empowering the perpetuation of this violence. Charlottesville knows all too well what happens when people look away from injustice. Do not look away. Let us speak clearly and boldly tonight. Ceasefire now.
Ms. Walker? No.
Thank you for taking my question. My name is Jenny Liguri, and like many of us here, I'm here to ask that you vote in favor of the ceasefire resolution. I am a resident of Charlottesville, the Fry Spring neighborhood. I am a new resident. My husband and I made the very calculated decision of building a home, raising our children here in Charlottesville, contributing to the city with our tax dollars. And we did that because even though this is a city that was built on inequality and built on injustice, we can see the efforts that it's making today to make up for its history. For example, the honoring of the Charlottesville 12 later this month. We chose to make a home here because this is a city that says we can and we will do better for everyone. And my colleagues before me have made the case, I think, for why we should be vocal about not supporting the genocide in Gaza and the apartheid state of Israel. It must end. They have told you the details and the statistics today and last time of the thousands of innocent men, women, and children. The children who have been killed, who are being starved, who have lost parents and relatives and friends and limbs, who are traumatized. My colleagues have told you these details, and I'm here to tell you that a ceasefire resolution from Charlottesville would speak multitudes to the nation, that a town that was built on inequality now stands for and demands justice for all oppressed people everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Nakaya Walker, Charlottesville, Virginia. Mayor, council, I'm here. I've sent emails about my concerns about Flock. I'm going to read a couple things that I just took. quick screenshot of some that I was sending you all as you all were talking at the 4 o'clock hour. And if the virtual calls can be allowed again, I do want to put that up front, and then if a 4 o'clock meeting, time for public comment. Flock was founded in 2017. By 2024, Flock fixed cameras have been installed in over 4,000 cities, 42 states across the U.S. Flock has raised $380 million in venture funding with a $3.5 billion valuation in 2022. All of you all fully understand what following the money means. So I have a lot of comments about my concerns about Flock. I've watched a lot of interviews with Garrett, the founder. I have very, just extreme concern. Back to this community, I want to start with a comment about Clinton in 2016. In 2016, Clinton got hammered when she was running for president because of comments she made in 1996 about super predators. Her comment at the time was, they are often the kind of kids that are called super predators. Clinton said in 1996, at the height of anxiety during her husband's administration about the high rates of crime and violence, no conscience, no empathy, and we can talk about why they end up the way they do, but first we must bring them to a heel. And that is the position you all are taking in this community with Flock, with Project Safe Neighborhoods, with anti-gang. You are bringing to a heel, and primarily Black kids have been affected by this criminal justice system in this community. In 2016, Clinton then says, my life work has been about lifting up children and young people who have been let down by the system and by society, kids who never got the chance they deserved. Clinton continued in that statement, and unfortunately today there are way too many of those kids, especially in the African American community. We haven't done right by them. We need to end the school to prison pipeline and replace it to cradle to college pipeline. You all are in a position where you all are going to be apologizing in decades to come, or someone on your behalf, because of decisions like this. At a minimum, your PCOB staff member should know how the system works to be able to comment on it. At a minimum, you all need to make the initial investment to make sure that what your chief is saying is actually something that can happen. People are being abused by surveillance systems, and the community that has been abused the most are Black people in this community.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, that was the last public comment.
No, I was number 14 and I wasn't called.
Well, it was only the first eight are guaranteed. So there'll be another opportunity for public comment at the end. We're now going to go on to the consent agenda.
Yeah, he doesn't want me to because I'm for this. That's why.
Consent agenda, number 3, minutes. January 22nd, regular meeting. January 26th, council retreat. February 1st, special meeting and budget work session. February 7th, joint council and school board budget work session. March 14th, budget work session. March 21st, budget forum and public hearing. And March 26th, decarbonization work session. There was a scrivener's error on the initial packet that went out, but I've corrected that. Number 4, resolution to appropriate USDA Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry Inflation Reduction Grant for Charlottesville Urban Forest Management Planning, $150,000, second reading. 3, resolution appropriating funding in the amount of $21,458 to be received from the Library of Virginia Circuit Court Records Preservation Grant Review Board, second reading. 6, ordinance amending the Charlottesville Code of Ordinances, Section 2-98B, to increase the appropriation amount requiring 2 readings from $1,001 to $5,000. Second reading. 7, resolution, an award of FY24 Charlottesville Affordable Housing Fund, or CAF, and FY25 Housing Operations and Program Support, HOPS. So those are 2 separate resolutions, and both are second reading. 8, ordinance amending City Code Article 2, Section 2-38, regarding the organizational meeting, and Section 2-39, elections, terms, and general powers and duties of the mayor, this is all a title, vice mayor, and mayor pro tempore. Mayor's veto, second reading. 9, resolution appropriating funding for the Rugby Avenue Bicycle and Pedestrian Trail Project, $130,059.50, one of 2 readings. 10, resolution appropriating funding from the Bama Works grant to Community Action Foster Families, Community Attention Foster Families, $5,000, one of 2 readings. 11, resolution appropriating funding from the Batten Foundation to the Department of Human Services, $40,000, one of 2 readings. 12, resolution for approval of memorandum of understanding between Bennett's Village and the City of Charlottesville. 13, a resolution for approval of a lease agreement between Bennett's Village and the City of Charlottesville.
Okay. Thank you. We'll now have public comments on those 13 items, just on those 13 items read in the consent agenda. Would anyone like to speak on one of those items? Any comment from councilors? If not, can I get a motion to approve in a second?
I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, please vote. Motion passes to approve consent agenda 5-0. Next on the agenda is the city manager's report.
Mayor and council, I'm going to forego my report and let you all move on to your action items.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire and end the violence in Israel and Palestine. Councilor Vice Mayor Pinkston will present.
Yes, I don't feel the need to reread the ordinance, or the resolution rather. It's in your packet. It's the same one that Councilor Oshrin read 2 weeks ago. So there's been no change. You're welcome to look in the packet. It's been reviewed by a number of different people, and so I think there is at least consensus on what it is we're voting on tonight. I would like to just say a few comments, and then I don't know if my colleagues have anything to add or not. First thing I want to do is to thank my colleagues. These are fine people here with me, for their graciousness in letting me revisit this vote. It's a sign of the strength of this council, I think, that we can do this. I also want to thank those, many of you in the audience, many from different perspectives, who've helped me over the last 3-4 weeks to really sit with this and to try to think through it well. I think this should go without saying, but I believe it's important to change your mind and to revisit a decision if, upon new information or upon further reflection, you've come to believe you made a mistake. I largely agree with Councilor Snook in his comments a few weeks ago about institutional modesty. I think that that's an important principle. I do believe that by and large we should stick with our knitting, as they say in city government. And I will also say that as an elected official, it's not uncomplicated to take a vote like this when many of your constituents do see this conflict as complex. That said, I've become convinced that there are times and places in which I, as an elected official, should lend the support of my conscience to a public action like this resolution. This seems to me one of those moments. I've also come to believe that the fact that there are complexities, that should not prevent us from seeing what's not at all complex. The impact of this conflict on innocent people is morally outrageous. Now, I don't know if this conflict is the issue of our times, but it is certainly an important one. And we do have skin in the game in as much as A, this city is a home for refugees of all creeds and nationalities, and B, national defense plays a large role in our local economy. Our tax dollars are implicated in this conflict. Now, as to the resolution itself, the content of it and the content of the resolution is not identical with what other people have said today necessarily. The content of the resolution is in the packet, and I support the content of that resolution. I've become convinced that its authors, some of whom I've met, intentionally sought to strike a neutral and balanced tone. Others may disagree. It's a shame that a word like ceasefire has itself become controversial. But I think that we can all agree that the cessation of hostilities is good and worth seeking. Almost done. I realize that there are also concerns about unintended consequences, especially in a place like Charlottesville. I can only say that I've thought about that, and I still believe that this is the right and courageous thing to do. The final thing I'll say is this: hate has no home in Charlottesville. Antis of any sort and phobias of any sort are not part of our DNA. We are pro-inclusion, pro-kindness, pro-empathy. I hope that we can remember that and turn the page tonight.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to give our other colleagues an opportunity to, if you want to chime in or if you have anything you want to add.
Sure. I know we discussed this 2 weeks ago, and I don't really have much original new thoughts to share, but I will just reiterate again, the reason I'm still supportive of this resolution is I proceed from the place that all human life is of equal value. And we can discuss historical origins and back and forth and what governments did, but when you confront dead children, none of that matters. That's true for October 7th and the innocent civilians who lost their life on that tragic day. It's also true from New York Times reporting the over 30,000 civilians in Gaza who have died. The famine that's been reported in the New York Times is imminent. Over half of buildings as of February 1st being damaged or destroyed in Gaza, and the danger of the conflict spreading beyond Gaza into both the West Bank, potentially Syria, Lebanon, Iran, and the risk there. And I'll just say again, I do think we have a very small voice, but it is still a voice to weigh in, because we as elected officials, people in the community, when they see the consequences of American foreign policy, which are felt around the entire world, it's easy to feel a sense of hopelessness because we can't control what Northrop Grumman does directly. We can't control what Congress does directly. But I think we have to do what we can, which is often small, but it's still something. So I do think it is appropriate, and I would say I thought it was appropriate in the past when we passed resolutions opposed to the Iraq War, opposed to Trump escalating a military conflict with Iran. I think it would have been appropriate for us to oppose the war and famine in Yemen that the United States helped fund by supporting Saudi Arabia. So in my mind, this is not isolated to just any one actor. I think this is part of the role of local government. So I appreciate that we've been able to have this discussion again. I still plan to vote in support of it.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I too plan to vote in support of it again as well. I think that what it helps with is that it lends our voice to many. So alone, we might not be effective, but we join a voice from Harrisonburg nearby, we join a voice from cities across the country, we join all of your voices individually to become one of many, and that's where we have power. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
me say that I continue to believe that it is unwise for City Council to take positions on international issues, particularly issues like this that have proven to be intractable for decades, if not millennia. President Biden and Senators Kaine and Warner have already endorsed the goals advocated by this resolution. It was on February 14th, 2024, that they signed on to a letter that had been written by, among others, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, a lot of the progressives in the Senate, calling for 3 goals: an immediate ceasefire, an immediate exchange of hostages, and significant humanitarian aid to Gaza on an emergency basis. Those are the 3 goals that are set out in the resolution that is being given to us tonight. I personally wrote to both senators on February 15th, the next day, 2024, endorsing the position that they took in the letter that they had signed the day before. At about the same time, the Biden administration began working on the UN Security Council resolution endorsing these same 3 goals. That resolution came up for discussion on March 21st, 2024, and although it was supported by a majority of the Security Council that day, it was vetoed by Russia and China. The resolution is basically asking, and so I should add that almost the same resolution was passed 4 days later on March 25th, with the United States abstaining at that point, calling for those 3 things: immediate ceasefire, an immediate exchange of hostages, and significant humanitarian aid to Gaza on an emergency basis. So this resolution that we are spending this, that we're having this discussion about, is really basically asking the President and both of our senators to take a position that they have already taken.
And they're still sending weapons.
Please, sir. Please.
And just to mention, it has been mentioned before that this resolution does not call for cutting off weapons shipments. Maybe it should, but it doesn't. So my feeling about it is that the resolution is basically asking us to take a position they have already taken, but which neither side, neither Israel nor Palestine, has been willing to implement itself. Since the resolution is going to pass, because I can count to 3, I will abstain rather than vote no, because I would not want a no vote to be misunderstood as a no vote on the substance.
Thank you. You want to call the question?
Yeah, I would call a question. I would move for approval of this resolution.
Second.
Okay. Can we vote, please?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. The motion passes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, Thank you. So you all are certainly welcome to stay for the rest of the agenda. If not, I'll just give you a few minutes now to exit. You're welcome to stay, though. We have some other public hearings.
And the Retirement Commission.
There's plenty of city business left.
You all right, brother?
Although most people talked about city business with Flock.
I mean, there's even more.
I know.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Please, thank you. Please exit so we can continue with the meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's nice having a full
The next agenda item is a public hearing on the FY 2025 budget ordinance and annual appropriation and tax rate and tax levy ordinance. Is the first of two readings. Chrissy?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me? Good
Barely.
evening, Council. Tonight is a public hearing on the budget. You have in your packet a copy of the budget ordinance for the 2025 proposed budget. The budget proposes just over $251 million. As you know, we've been discussing. This is one of many opportunities we've had to work on this budget. The budget includes 3 tax increases. That's a % on meals, a % on lodging, and 2 cents on the real estate tax. The line items of the budget are detailed within the ordinance. And with that, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, or we can go to the public hearing.
Any questions or clarification? Can you turn off that light? Thank you. Any questions from the councilors right now?
I guess one question. So I'm not saying we will or won't do this, but a conversation topic that has come up is the personal property tax rate. What, if any, deadlines exist for that?
So we have not currently advertised any changes in the personal property tax rate. That would require a 7-day advertisement and a public hearing on that as well. And the city charter requires that we have the budget adopted by April 15th.
So practically this week, we would need to finalize whether we are or aren't doing anything?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I know that's something we were looking into. Are we still looking into that?
It's, at this moment, it would be a matter of whatever you all would like to do and that expression of the support.
And I think that would facilitate a special meeting of council.
Right.
So perhaps by our Thursday work session, we have discussions amongst ourselves and figure out where the majority's at?
Yeah, I thought there was going to be some follow-up in terms of like what would be involved in Councilor Osheron's suggestion.
There was, well, I gave a reaction to it from the Commissioner of Revenue's perspective that
There was an email that came out?
The escalated version
Okay.
was against the Dillon rule, that we would not be able to do that.
There was an email to that effect?
I responded to Ms.
Just
Osheron.
me.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I requested that we continue to follow up with just the flat rate expiration
Right.
of that.
Well, and in that moment, that would be amongst the 5 of you making a decision to identify what it is that you would like us to do. There's nothing for me to tell you at that moment.
Okay, I thought you were going to talk to Mr. Divers about.
No, you're free to
feasibility.
change the tax rate. There was nothing to discuss in that regard. If you were just going to make a different change in regards to levying a higher property tax rate, that's your call.
Oh, I misunderstood then. I thought you had said that it would take going back to Mr. Divers to find out some information.
If there was a different version on that variation and the model that was identified, that would be a different conversation. I took it to mean that you were just interested in a blanket increase consideration, so therefore talking to your peers about that.
I am interested in that, but after that, I thought you still needed to talk to Todd about something.
No.
Oh, okay. In that case, I was proposing a flat personal property tax increase to replace the meals tax and potentially some of the real estate tax revenue. I've got some math to show for that. I haven't gotten a chance to talk to Mayor Wade or Councilor Snook about that yet.
So it's my understanding that the meal tax, what's the numbers like?
So there's a fun spreadsheet with math, and you can plug in different amounts. But basically, the personal property tax is where we have room to grow. And the reason why, here, actually, I have a little something written about it. Give me just one sec.
So that's for like vehicles, things like that?
Yes, and so what we can do is we can have different rates for different categories within the personal property taxes, because it covers cars, bikes, boats, but also industrial machinery. And so I wouldn't necessarily want to apply a rate increase to industrial machinery that is in the
But-
course of business, but for personal property.
But that's going to impact pretty much everyone, because a lot of people have vehicles.
Yes, so the initial suggestion and what I was informed would be against the Dillon rule was that we couldn't do a progressive rate like the income tax, where your first
Yeah.
10,000 car is this, the next bid is this.
Yeah.
I think it would probably be helpful to
So, I mean,
send you some info about it.
I just know this late in the game, I'm not, I may consider it, at least personally, for next year, as we have a little bit more time to digest it. I know that that is something that, you know, maybe everyone does, they may not have a house, they may not eat out a lot of people have vehicles, and I'm just not comfortable personally, you know, so.
This was not something that I was intending to spring on everybody today.
Yeah.
I thought I was still waiting for feedback from the Commissioner of Revenue, and then I was going to continue to present it to the rest of
Right.
council.
Well, let's kind of see if there's enough support for it to be considered. I know that we need at least 3 to consider. So maybe you want to talk a little bit more about to give Brian and Lloyd and Michael some.
I would at least like to hear what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally open to hearing more about it. I haven't made up a decision about if that's the direction to go or not, but.
I have a little something I can read that I prepared before when I thought we might be able to get the progressive amount on the way. So we have the chance with the personal property increase to do something creative and progressive. Not as progressive as if we could do a graduated rate adjustment, but I realize that phasing in comp and class and collective bargaining is the right thing to do, but my chance to express that opinion as phasing it in as a counselor never really existed because I joined in this particular strategy and budget session too late. But it's not too late for me to follow through on my campaign platform goals and ideas. The voters supported me for my housing, transit, and urbanism ideas, so there's a desire to deprioritize cars and reprioritize people and shelter. Those are my priorities. I recently told a constituent that I remembered seeing a sign at a local hardware store when I was a kid that said fast, good, or cheap. Pick any two. When you're planning a city that changes to cars, people, trees, pick any two. I pick people and green spaces for people to enjoy. Deprioritizing cars means that more land use can go towards our climate goals, safer streets, shorter commutes, and economic prosperity for local businesses buoyed by foot traffic and outdoor dining. In line with this vision, which again was supported by the majority of voters, I'd like to propose leaving the real estate tax and the meals tax alone. This was before the adjustment, so I don't know if we can do that entirely, but that was the initial goal. People need shelter and they need to eat. So instead, we should increase the personal property tax so we can fully fund our budget and make strides in our climate and transit goals. As you all are aware, there's 9 strategic outcome areas that were selected last year to prioritize. Taxing personal property instead of homes and meals makes clear direct progress not just in climate and transportation, but in 6 of those 9. Climate action, economic prosperity, housing, public safety, recreation, and transportation. Lower personal property taxes are a hidden subsidy for cars, and we need to stop doing that. We subsidize cars with free parking and incredibly inexpensive permit parking fees. It costs 7 cents a day to rent the space for a permit parking spot, a gross undervaluing of city land. That counts all 365 days, I'm not sure. It changes slightly if you discount the weekends. In a city like ours, in a country like ours that has been redesigned and renewed to make space for cars instead of people, in that environment where public transit isn't adequate yet,
I'm sorry.
in that environment where public transit isn't adequate yet, where sidewalks and protected bike lanes are missing, folks are basically required to own a car for getting around, which is an equity concern in addition to a land use disaster. I am, working on changing that. It costs money to own and operate a vehicle, so it's already a tax of sorts. So that's where I was hoping we could do the progressive property tax. Unfortunately, we can't. It would be a flat increase. But there's already some adjustments available in that. For example, disabled vets are already exempt from personal property taxes. We can leave the industrial machine category alone. Bicycles, e-bikes would already be exempt. The city's priorities are not found in its mission statement, but in its budget. Changing the personal property tax accomplishes the goal of proving that our priorities are climate and transit focused, as well as addressing equity concerns of our residents in need. We already collect more real estate taxes per capita than most comparable cities in Virginia, and adding a % to the meals tax is considered regressive. Adjusting the personal property tax means we can close our budget gap, leave those other taxes where they are or increase them less, and make progress on our strategic initiatives. We can show that we're serious about making our city safer, more livable, and more affordable. So my proposal was, if we need to raise property tax category, if we need to raise with a flat rate $5.2 million, which would be the gap to fund the schools at $7 million and make up the remainder not factored in. So there's already going to be an increase in revenue from meals and real estate just by nature of inflation and increased other stuff. So the amount that is not coming from the tax increase, you discount that, there's still a gap left. So this funds that. If we go from $4.20, which is our current rate, to about $6, that makes that up.
So I don't have a, sorry.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the concept. I just would need to see some confirmation from the revenue folks. I mean, it seems like a straightforward enough idea that I feel kind of dumb that I didn't think about it 2 years ago.
Well, and I do want to clarify that that calculation was based off a lot of assumptions, not knowing the exact number of vehicles, the exact value of vehicles, all of that. That was not accessible to me when I was doing this, but I estimated approximate number of households multiplied by approximate number of cars per household with some guesstimations about the value. So we would need input from our actual Office of Revenue to get correct numbers on that, so.
Right, so is it possible, Mr. Mayor, to give Mr. Divers 2 days and come talk to us on Thursday about what that might look like?
Well, that.
Or is it, in other words, we're way down to the wire here, so if it's not practical, it's not practical, but.
Yeah.
We have been given the number, I just can't find it right now, of what one additional cent.
$30,000 per cent.
Right there.
So,
Okay.
1 cent of the real estate, is that what you're talking about for the
Yeah.
taxes? 1 cent on real estate is 1.1. 1% on meals is a little over 3 million. So it would be $5
And I
5
think
million.
Councilor Ostrand's point, which, she made to me, is that that slide is helpful, but the scale is completely different. I mean, in other words, 1 cent, to compare it to a meals tax where you're gonna get $1 million from like an incremental change, or 3 million, I guess, or the real estate tax where you get $1 million from a sort of standard incremental change versus a penny on the property tax. I guess it'd be helpful to know sort of, I could figure it out here, but what would it take to get something equivalent to half a percent meals tax equivalent with property tax? What would from 420, in other words, I get the fact of the slide, but it would be, I think, more helpful if we said 10 cents got you X versus 1 cent.
Yeah, we kind of ignored it at the beginning because it seemed like such a paltry number, but
10
that's
cents on the meals tax?
No,
or
I'm sorry,
on
the
personal
properties.
property,
Yeah.
because we just got a 1 penny. We were like, oh, 30,000.
So we didn't give you a penny on personal property. The only thing we gave you was on real estate. We
Well-
didn't.
No,
talking about
on
the
the slide
slide.
from the presentations way
The
before, it
chart.
was
Oh,
like, if you
the
do an
early chart.
adjustment for each
Okay.
of these things, this would be the increase in revenue you would
And
get.
some of that's varied because we're still adjusting for values, correct? Yeah.
So, to, I think, answer your question, if we were to cut the meals tax, the meals tax rate by, instead of going up 1%, goes up 0.5%, that's a difference of $1.5 million. That works out to about 50 cents on the property tax rate. So 420 would go to 470. Which I think would be pretty close to the highest in the state.
There's several localities that are at 5.5, at 6. We are at kind of definitely the top of collecting per capita for real estate tax, but we're not at the top for personal property.
I confess I
And
did
if it
not look
helps,
at it at all.
if it helps, I know one of the concerns is people register their cars in the county. The county is also considering raising their personal property tax rates, not to where we are, but
So
they're
just
not
a
leaving
note
that
on
alone
that,
as well.
though, I believe the county dropped their personal property
That's
tax
correct.
rate when the
years
assessments
ago.
went up.
Correct, and they're raising it
Yeah.
back.
But I think what they're proposing raising it to still is going to be less than where we are right now.
Correct, it's still in
That's
the
true.
high threes.
I think it's going to 350.
392, I think.
I'm
Well, let me
sorry.
just ask,
392,
so
I think.
Yeah.
if, just to kick the tires around, if we were to say 0.5% of the meals tax, which is roughly 1.5 million, is there a way, Mr. Divers, between now and Thursday for you to say this is what it would look like in terms of changes to property tax? That way we've at least had a chance to honor Councilor Ostron's idea here. I think it's a good idea. I have concerns about the practical execution of it and also the late, sort of the late date.
Would we be able to get a public hearing in for that? Would you all be able to schedule a special meeting so that we could actually do the 7-day notice?
If it's Thursday, if we find out Thursday, what is Thursday? The
4th, excuse me.
And then if we do it the next day, is there something special now with the paper thing?
It's tight. I'm not sure. Do
So
you
we
know
might not
how
make
we
the
could
9th,
even
but
get
we
that
really have
in?
the 15th as
No,
the
if the
backstop.
decision is made on Thursday, the 11th is also a Thursday, and that would be probably the advertisement date. I don't think we could get it to them in a week and have it in 7 days. I think we still would need at least 9 days, because we need to get it to the paper
Yeah.
at least 2 days before publishing, right?
Yep.
So it sounds like it's,
I mean, we're certainly
A
willing to
Saturday
try. We can reach out, but I guess we'd have to figure out when you all could schedule the special meeting. And we would have to figure out if we could do the advertisement. We can certainly reach out tomorrow and see if that's possible.
Could we just do it on the 15th as a part of our regular meeting?
Sure? Yeah. I mean, point of order, if we adopt on the 15th, is that in compliance?
As long as you conduct the public hearing prior to the adoption of your budget, it would be permissible for you to conduct the public hearing on the personal property tax increase on the 15th of April.
And then incorporate that into the budget resolution?
Yes, and so then when after you conducted the public hearing and closed the public hearing, you could then amend your proposed budget to make whatever changes you'd like to make as a result of the public hearing.
So then we would not need to meet on the 9th at all.
Wait a minute, this is going to result in less meetings?
And I promise I wasn't holding this back. I thought I was waiting on,
I just need to
the
clarify
response
because I
from-
have to get
Yeah.
the agendas and the notices.
And to the clerk's point, to the extent that council wants to move forward with this tentative plan, it's eminently achievable in terms of the timing. But I think to the clerk's point, I believe the only item for consideration on the 9th would be the adoption of the budget. And if this change were to be made, then arguably council might want to consider dispensing with that meeting unless it wanted additional time to discuss the budget, but you'd be discussing the budget before you've conducted the public hearing.
And so theoretically, we could move to advertise this because an advertisement isn't a guarantee. And then we do that tomorrow, then Thursday or as soon as possible, we hear some options. And then,
You need advertisement 7 days for a 7-day period before consideration. So you would back that off of the April 15th day. And of course, math is never a lawyer's best subject, but if it appeared on April 8th, I think that would satisfy the statutory requirement if the ad appeared.
Well, today is Monday, so if it follows, we might be able to, if we're lucky, we might be able to get the ad in on this Saturday. That would be the 6th. that would give us the 13th, so you'd be able to do it by the 15th.
So I just want to make sure that Sam understands what.
I do.
And
Sure. Can you repeat it to make sure that?
That we are, initially, we were looking to eliminate the need to raise $5 million in taxes through the meals tax and real estate proposed increases, which will determine, is that possible? And I also heard maybe we could look at 0.5% on the meals tax, which is 1.5 million.
So I
And the
guess we have
question
to
is,
re-advertise meals too, right?
what does that generate?
And we need to know the max that you want to advertise for personal property. But I guess we don't have to re-advertise meals because we
Because
would
it's
be
lower.
lower.
As long as,
Yeah.
as long as the meals tax is decreasing, there's no
I'm certainly
additional
not
public
proposing
hearing
raising
required.
that more.
The only thing I would be interested, I don't know about others, is what we could get from 0.5%, the 1.5, if we could replace 0.5% of meals tax with property taxes, that's all that I would really be prepared to do right at this point.
And that's all I would be interested in as well. And I'll say, all I'm really looking for is to confirm whether that math is accurate about, just get a sense of what increase equals what dollar amount. And to be clear, my mind is not made up. My biggest concern with any of these taxes is which is the least regressive. They're all bad, but what is the least regressive? And so I will say I'm very open to discussing it, going through scenarios, but I'm initially a little skeptical just because poor people and working people still drive cars, and we don't have the bus system that we want. We didn't even fund bus drivers to get to our pre-pandemic service. And the economic literature is very clear that the real estate tax is the most progressive before you even factor in the fact that we have a real estate tax relief program. So that's my only skepticism, but I am completely open to discussing it. And I would like to read more about personal property taxes and see what the literature is about how regressive they are.
But you don't have any, I mean, this is it as far as, different ideas to put on the table for us to consider.
Right.
So again, we're confirming that the pursuit that we are undertaking at this time is to identify what amount of a property tax increase would replace 0.5% increase on the meals tax. So
that's
roughly
all.
$1.5 million.
That's, to me, all I would be comfortable with.
So you would still want to do meals, lodging, and personal property,
And real estate.
and real estate?
Yeah.
I was hoping to eliminate a couple of those.
Well, I think the thing is
I think that's the basis for me not moving forward, because
there's a-
this needs to happen. That there was no clarity for me in that moment, so I do apologize for not reading that I needed to do something
I mean,
else.
what about if we do this next year?
Well, next year, we're going to have an even higher budget.
I know,
and
but
more
we'll have,
places
we'll have had
to pull it from.
years, we'll have almost a year to sort this out.
Yeah, I think that the time value of money means that the money in our pockets now is worth more than the money next year.
Yeah, but I
So,
think the confusion that this is going to bring to staff is also something to be weighed.
So we're not talking about getting more money, we're just talking about getting different.
Moving it around.
right, and I think we technically do have the time. Yes, it is different and new, but I don't necessarily think that means it's not worth exploring. I think we haven't gotten accurate numbers to explore yet. We kind of didn't do our due diligence at the beginning by thinking about it back then. I mean, I missed it too. But I would like to see some information about it, see what we could do for that.
That's what we'll do.
So what does that mean practically then? So
We'll get it to you as soon as we possibly can, and if not, before 6 o'clock on Thursday.
Well, we'll need to do it before Thursday to have time to advertise.
That's why I said what I did,
Yeah.
as soon as possible,
Yeah.
So the notion is, again, $1.5 billion roughly.
is what we're looking for.
Well, if there's general, at least hypothetical interest, it seems like the numbers I don't think they've changed much over the last few years in terms of what a penny would be.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I mean, vehicle valuations have fluctuated
Well, that's true.
quite a bit,
Yeah.
and we're still wrestling with the 24 personal property book. This is gonna be exciting.
What are your concerns?
You gotta come up here.
Be honest.
We're still valuing vehicles for 2024 right now. We're not exactly sure where that's going to land. I mean, it's going to be in the ballpark of where Chrissy's projections are, but I don't know how precise it's going to be. Also, I've got a few folks that I would like to have involved in this who are on vacation this week, so that's going to be
spring break.
That's going to be fun. But we'll give it a college try,
If your original guesstimate that we were given was that 1 cent equals $30,500 or something like that, and we're making our guesstimate for now on the basis of $30,000 roughly, is it reasonable to think that we're still in the same ballpark?
Yeah, I mean, based on what I know now, without having actually run any numbers, yeah.
I guess I'm more interested in, basically this is oh, never mind.
I think where it still gets to be a progressive is someone without the means is not going to be buying a $78,000 pickup truck. So.
They might.
I mean, vehicle values are, pretty high right now.
I guess I would just be interested to know, and we've had these conversations a lot about the other taxes, and I've kind of got a, conceptual framework around it. But if we basically are increasing personal property taxes by an order of magnitude, is that right? 10 times?
Well,
no, a little over 10%.
50 cents?
Okay.
Yeah.
50 cents as opposed to 420.
So only about 10%.
Yeah.
Okay.
11.7 or something.
I can deal with that. I can live with that.
You didn't ask this, but I'm going to offer it anyway. When vehicle values were up in 2020 because of COVID, we heard more about that than we did about the real estate rate that year. Because people pay that out of their pocket. They don't have a mortgage company that's taking care of it for them. They actually see that check go out. And so they know exactly how much more they're paying.
Well, I largely agree with Councilor Oshrin in terms of, her views about cars. And I don't know, I think if this is a tool that we have, I'd be interested. I'm more concerned really about having the time to kind of socialize it and think through it. Takes me a while, as you know. And staff in terms of being able to pull all this off, but I guess you've got a day or two to, yeah.
So, I just want to make sure it's at least 3 councilors that want staff to pursue this. So I'm just going to kind of go down to make sure that.
Yeah, but we're going to get like a couple days and then that's going to be it. I'm going to pull the ripcord and go back with.
Well, I just want to say, can we just clarify, because I think Councilor Oshrin's original proposal was no meals, no real estate, and personal property instead. But now we're doing meals, real estate, and
the meals tax.
Reduce meals
So there'd be
0.5%.
4 tax changes.
Okay.
Real estate, meals tax, but instead of it being 3, it'd be 2.5. No, anyway, half a percent less. Lodging and personal property.
So we're doing all 4 taxes to get 5.2, which is what you said. Right? Yeah.
That would be what I would be comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with like rethinking the whole tax structure at this point.
Lloyd?
I don't know where I would come out on it, but I would certainly be willing to learn more about it. Let's learn more about it.
Michael?
I'm willing to learn more about it, but again, as I said, I raised the skepticisms I have, and would just say again, I think if we're going to increase taxes, we should just follow the economic literature and go with the real estate, because they all suck, but at least that has a relief program.
Hey, I think 4 taxes is worse than 3 taxes, so I'm outvoted, but I'm not, but it sounds like we have enough support to pursue it, and, but we need to make sure that any other proposals, this is the time.
The last day, yeah. And I want to just have 2 small things. One is, I don't necessarily agree that all taxes are bad. I mean, it's part of the social contract. It's how we fund the things we want. I think the tax rate that we have on our real estate right now is one of the highest, not necessarily rate-wise in the state, but when you use it as a multiplier with assessments, is one of the highest collections per capita in the state. We are comparable with no one our size, and then only with kind of the more expensive Northern Virginia cities, which is that's not our milieu. So, so there's only so high we can go on that, and if next year we're going to come in with a bigger budget, need more funding, where else do we go? We can't keep squeezing people on that. It does trickle down to renters, which we know is the majority of people in Charlottesville. And as we are looking at our budget, we just had the CIP work session. We are working on transit. We are building sidewalks and bike lanes and working on an e-bike subsidy program and all things that can be counteracted. If you're going to get taxed out of something, I'd rather someone gets taxed out of their car than their house.
Any other comments right now?
Not that I want either of those things to happen, just to clarify.
We don't need to get into the full debate, but I'll just say again, the economic literature is very clear that it's more progressive, and we have a relief program, and the value of your home is going to track inflation as well as wealth that you have. It's a real conversation to have, but again, poor and working people, they do drive cars, they do work in the county, they can't rely on our bus system. But to reorient to the budget public hearing, to confirm, we don't have any funding to add additional drivers to even return our bus service to what it was before the pandemic, so we'll still be in Lifeline service?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to open up, so I'm not sure what the public is for.
Oh, God. It was a bit more, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh like that.
So we had a public hearing on
Tax levy and the budget.
Ordinance appropriation and tax rate levies.
So would anyone like to? Then you, okay.
I'm Zach Brown. I live in the Belmont neighborhood, and I'd like to know when's the last time any of y'all went to the grocery store, or anywhere for that matter. Milk's going up a lot, eggs are going up a lot, bread going up a lot, and gas, big shocker I'm sure, going up a lot. And why do we need to be taxed out of anything? Taxes should be minimal to begin with, and if you really want to go down that road, personal property tax shouldn't exist to begin with, but I won't go too far down there because that's a landscape I don't really want to touch at the moment. But why raise it? Because you're just going to screw people. I understand you're a government body, that's inherently what you do anyway. However, why? I don't really care about a lot of things. I do care about being left alone. I very much like being left alone by government bodies. That includes personal property taxes. Why do we need to be taxed out of anything at all? We'd rather us be taxed out of our car. Why should we be taxed out of that? None of you were present when I went to buy my car. None of you were present when I went to buy my home. And if you really want to get down to it, none of you deserve a dime of it. And I got to pee, so I'm going to yield the rest.
Thank you.
I understand it. My name is Em Gunter. I live on Chelsea Drive near Jefferson Park Avenue. I understand it's too late in the year to consider finding the funding to bring our bus service back to pre-pandemic levels, but that needs to be a priority going forward. As it stands right now, there are no buses in the city of Charlottesville on Sundays, meaning that anybody in Charlottesville that relies on public transit to get to work either has to walk, Uber, bum a ride, and this is a southern city where walking up to Walmart just ain't possible. We need the bus service to get back to where it is. Just please, if you want to improve the lives of the poor citizens in the city of Charlottesville, then find the money for it. I would love to pay more in meals taxes or lodging for that.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak now?
Don Gathers again, city resident. I am going to beg to differ and say that all taxes are bad. Just a few years ago, my wife and I, our personal property taxes went up $56,000 over a 2-year period. $56,000 when we made no substantial upgrades to the home whatsoever. So I agree with the previous gentleman who spoke about personal property taxes, and I don't understand the mindset or the necessity to feel like we have to tax anyone out of anything. Eventually and essentially what's going to happen is you're going to tax your residents right out of the city. That may be what some of the end game for some of you. But the low-income people will not be able to remain in this city. And I just want you all to marinate on that for a moment.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this? Yes, sir.
Well, thank you all for giving me a few minutes today. My name is Phil Hamilton, Albemarle County resident, and I, also agree with other two individuals who spoke. We should not be raising taxes at the time. We shouldn't be taxed out of our cars. We shouldn't be taxed out of anything. There's our property. We have a right to own these things, and we should have a government that should work with us to encourage in a capitalist system that more people can acquire the things that they need, including vehicles, so they get to and from work. Now, I know if I didn't have a vehicle, my income stream would be reduced by at least 90%. For me, a vehicle is absolutely essential for the work that I do, and for many others who live in Charlottesville City and in the county. Another thing I wanted to note is, with local government, you consider resolutions, and, the last one that was just voted on about the ceasefire now, and I disagree with it.
Point of order, this is not on
for
public hearing.
Yeah, so
I think it needs to be in the trash. That's where it belongs. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on the FY25 budget ordinance and annual appropriation? Thank you, Ken.
Hey, Dan Miller, resident of Belmont. Mayor Wade, I'm sorry for blinding you with my cell phone flashlight when I walked in. I don't think that's normal procedure here, so I do apologize. I did want to mention, nobody likes paying taxes. I don't like paying taxes, but I think we're obviously having a discussion here about how to do that in the fairest, most progressive way we can, and I think I'm picking up on that energy, that we want to do that in a responsible way and kind of make the best of a bad situation. I happen to not be a low-income resident of Charlottesville, and I'm certainly on board with, paying in some graduated way into the city that we live in to improve it. And I think we can all, when we have the space to think about it, kind of agree with that norm that, we should have a way of adjusting that burden based on your income. At least I think that's not a super controversial stance. And I often sit in these meetings and I hear the sort of normative constraint around our ability to act in a reasonable way. And it always comes back to this Dillon rule. And I'd like to, maybe this is a naive comment, but it's frustrating to me to constantly hear that what I understand to be a pretty nebulous kind of procedural thing constantly constraining our ability to act. I may not know what I'm talking about, but I would like to be able to see Councilmember Oshrin's proposal, right? For example, in its true form, would be a way to implement a tax structure that would be responsive to people's income. And it would be nice to be able to see that happen and not feel like we're so constrained to broader forces. So I appreciate your effort on it. Obviously, I think it's something we have to pay into for our community. So I appreciate your work there.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Hi, thank you all. Claire Denton Spalding. I live in Fry Spring. And I wanted to say, I went to grad school to study public policy, and I understand that taxes are important. Raising taxes is important for everything that we enjoy about Charlottesville, our roads, our parks, the people that drive our buses, our bus system. And even though every time I look at my tax assessment, I open the envelope and I have a little prayer, I understand that that the increase in my taxes funds the things that I love about Charlottesville. And so I encourage you all to think about the personal property tax, and thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else like to speak? The next item we have on the agenda is appropriation, approving a budget and annual appropriation of funding in the city of Charlottesville for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. First of two readings. Okay. I know some of these things kind of meld in together, so but if anyone would like to speak on this, I closed the previous public hearing. I guess I have to officially close that and opening up this new one. And if no one wants to speak on the second ordinance, I'm going to close the second public hearing. And now we're at item number 16 on the agenda. Is that right, Sam? I just want to make sure I'm up to date.
Council needs to agree whether to move the ordinances forward.
I would move to move these ordinance forward.
Yeah.
To whatever date we're changing.
Yeah.
Future.
Yeah, so we did have a date on there of April the 9th. So we said the 15th, Sam, or?
Yes.
Okay, the 15th.
Okay, I would move that for both items 15A and B.
Yes.
That we consider for a second reading and final vote on April the 15th.
Do we need a motion as one
Well-
or two readings?
We don't need an official vote, just agree.
Yeah.
Okay, oh, yeah.
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 Sure.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Is
I'm sorry, Michael was going to say something.
Oh, no, I was just asking it.
Okay, sorry. Now,
I don't know if it's appropriate. Can we give like a can our attorney give like a 2-sentence briefing for our constituent, but the public in general, on what the Dillon rule is and why it constrains us so?
I would be happy to, Councilor Oshrin. The Dillon rule, which is the law of the Commonwealth, states that local governments may only act where there is express legislative authority from the General Assembly, or matters that are necessarily implied therefrom, and the latter provision is interpreted rather narrowly. So it is absolutely true that the Commonwealth of Virginia sharply constrains the abilities of local governments to act, as opposed to localities in other states, which are subject to a concept called home rule, which gives councils in those jurisdictions more latitude. I think that was more than 2 sentences. I apologize.
So basically it means we're only allowed to do the things we're expressly told we're allowed to do, and we can't do the things outside of that.
and they are not quick to give up that power. Matter of fact, they probably would never give it up.
And again, this This is why I think it's important, the real estate tax, under the Dillon Rule, we do have explicit authority to create relief programs based on a household's income or the assessed value of the home, including for some individuals, relief of up to 100%. Technicalities there, but it's the only one where that's even something we could discuss, and we do have relief programs.
Mayor Wade?
I'm sorry.
Before we do advertise, we will need to have a number, a proposed number to put in that advertisement.
Right. Okay. It sounded like 50?
Well, we don't know the math. Do we want to have a little wiggle room?
That's what they're gonna come back. The number, the 15th is the day, but I think it's.
What number do we want to advertise?
To advertise, that's what we have to figure out.
So,
Yep.
Is that okay, Keena?
Okay.
thank you.
Then the next item on the agenda is number 16, amending ordinance of the code to increase assessment value threshold at in which below qualifying vehicles will receive 100% personal property tax relief from $1,000 to $1,500. And this is the first of two readings, so.
Well, speaking of personal property, so there actually is some limited relief available for personal property that the state gives localities every year. The city gets about $3.5 million every year that we have to divvy up and assign to different vehicles according to certain rules. Up to now, the way that's been done is any vehicle with a value of under $3,000, of under $1,000 gets 100% relief, and then any vehicle, and then the rest of it gets divvied up among the value of all the other vehicles in the fleet, $20,000 and less, if that makes sense. What we're proposing is to raise that minimum threshold from $1,000 to $1,500. We're allowed to do that under the Dillon Rule. It's been addressed. We estimate that this would get us back to approximately the number of vehicles that were getting 100% relief about 5 years ago. It's been steadily dropping, as you know, because vehicle values have been increasing over the years. And so this would be one way to kind of offset that tax burden on at least owners of low-value vehicles, if that's any kind of barometer of income. And so that's what we have here. Tangentially, while we're speaking of it, this was not really going to have any effect on the overall personal property tax rate this year. We didn't think, because we didn't think the numbers of affected vehicles would be significant enough to change the math on the percentage that I was going to give you guys on the 9th. That's going to change some if we increase the rate. So I think we were looking at about 32% for everybody else. Everybody else, the value on everyone's vehicle that's $20,000 and less, we're probably going to get about 32% tax relief from the state. We got to go back to the drawing board on that. But that's not really germane to this item. What we're proposing here is to raise that limit, that 100% limit, to $1,500. There would be no budgetary impact because the money is already allocated to the city by the state. Anybody's got any questions?
But we would have to tweak
We'll have
the amounts that other folks would have their taxes reduced by.
Correct, and we don't think it's going to be that much if everything else stays the same. We don't really believe it's going to have much impact on everybody else.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Do we, if there's no questions, do we agree to move this to the 15th?
I just have a quick question. About how many vehicles would this apply to? You said a negligible amount, but what
So,
are ballpark?
I had it written down somewhere. So in 2023, there were about 2,300 qualifying vehicles that were valued at $1,000 per less. We imagine that's going to go up by about 20%.
Okay, thank you.
And then what is kind of the limiting principle in terms of how expansively this can go? Just purely, there's that dollar amount from the state, and
It's pretty much, the state has rewritten the rules so that localities can pretty much do what they want with it now. There for a long time, it was heavily prescribed exactly how you had to split that money up, but they've kind of let localities do what they want now. Most of them are still at $1,000 though.
right. But essentially, our limiting principle is just how far that 3.4 million will go, which at the end of the day probably isn't all that far in terms of a dollar amount for a specific individual.
Right. Right.
So I would suggest we put this on the consent agenda for next meeting, if possible.
Suits me.
Okay, everyone okay with going on consent agenda on the 15th?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you all, appreciate it.
You going
Thank
in the
you.
office and get
And
correct.
thank-
Okay.
And thank you in advance.
The next item on the agenda is ordinance to amend and reenact the city code, chapter 19, to allow participants of any city-sponsored retirement plan to serve on the retirement plan commission. The first of two readings, Ms. Birch.
Yes, come on up. This is Lisa Birch. She's with me on the Retirement Commission. I think this is something we can talk about really quickly.
Yes, it's not controversial at all.
Yeah, basically, when the Retirement Commission was begun, the language in the ordinance really only allowed people that were part of the original version of the retirement plan, which were defined benefit type plans. And now 30, almost 40% of our staff have defined contribution plans and other type plans, but aren't allowed to be on the commission due to the older language in the ordinance.
Correct.
And so the ordinance that's in your packet, and that's red line track changes, fixes that. And there's also really some sort of bringing it up to, there's some more sort of not grammatical, but not really significant changes that are included that just sort of bring it up to modern standards, as it were. So that's kind of what this is. It basically lets the Retirement Commission basically be more inclusive, representative of the entire city staff. So I support it.
That sounds good, and I know you've given a lot of thought to it, and there's probably not a week that goes by I don't get a text or a call from Brian about how much he enjoys serving on the Retirement Commission, so.
It's really a good commission.
Okay.
You're a funny man.
So, is this a consent agenda item for the 15th, or, Lloyd, did you have a question or something? Okay.
No, let's put it on the consent agenda.
Is this one of those things we can expedite?
It would be within council's authority, if it wished, to move to pass the ordinance this evening dispensing with the second reading. Your city code does provide that if you wish.
Well, my goodness.
Yeah. Natalie, you're efficient tonight. Getting rid of meetings and.
Okay, well, I would move the approval of this ordinance as outlined in the packet to allow not only defined benefit folks, but defined contribution plan people to be able to sit on the Retirement Commission.
And to pass it by.
And I would
4/5
move that we pass it by at least a 4/5 motion tonight, and so not have to have a second reading.
Second.
Second, further discussion? If not, let's vote. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Ms.
very
Birch.
much.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is the Tree Commission, State of the Forest.
Good evening, Mayor Wade and City Council. My name is Stephen Gaines. I'm the Urban Forester of the Charlottesville Parks and Rec Division. I'm just going to introduce our chairperson, Keisha Talbert, and Tyler Miller will also be helping to present. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And can we all just do a brief time check? How much time are you all planning on speaking?
How much did you prepare?
20 minutes
20
with some
minutes?
time for questions if there's energy, stamina.
Yeah. Well, if you can do it in 15, that'll be even better, but, you know.
But we're here for you.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
great. I'm going to start with just briefly introducing myself, mostly to say that I am a renter, a walker, someone lucky enough to live in North Downtown as a renter and walker, and I am a working, studying, and teaching poet in Charlottesville. A lot of what brings me to this work are the stressed trees along the downtown mall that brought me to seek my role as a commissioner. And so I'm just so moved that there is the willfulness that began with me as an artist that has opened up the kind of leadership that Tyler and I will be holding down this evening. Tyler is going to start and present the state of the forest, and then I will talk about what it looks like to align that investment at the scale of staff and funds.
Thank you.
So I know you guys hear me get up here all the time and say I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Tree Commission, but this time I actually am, so I'm kind of excited about that. Just a note about the makeup of the commission. I know you all know this, but for the people at home, you know, we're a cross-section of this community. We have a lot of different people. We have a professor emeritus of anthropology, professor of biophilic studies, we have arborists, we have landscape architects, and we have regular folks. I would kind of call myself more in the regular folk category. But we have come together to assess a lot of academic studies. We've done a lot of hard work looking at methodology and trying to dig to find the truth behind those numbers. The purpose of this report is to bring to your attention and to the attention of the residents of Charlottesville the state of our urban canopy and the compelling need for strategic interventions. The state of that urban canopy is imperiled. It is in decline. It has been in decline for some time. And we expect, if nothing changes, for that to continue, for it to continue to decline. This is due to a variety of reasons we have listed, including the significant infiltration of species that are damaging to our canopy, disparities among neighborhoods in the city, the increasing frequency of climate change-related weather events, drought being a recent one, and extreme heat. I know you guys have most of this information in your report, so I'll refer to you to that for the rest of it. We expect at least a continued loss of 15% by 2050 if nothing changes. So I guess tonight I would just ask you guys to consider the trees that line our streets. They are not immune to neglect and poor policy decisions. And despite the sacrifices and hard work of the people on this tree commission for, I believe decades at this point, we have kind of faltered in that mission to take care of those trees. Our voice, I think, has been drowned out by a somewhat indifferent approach by the powers that be. But not to just dwell on the negative, I would like to make this clear that we are still here trying to do the work, trying to bring ideas that can reverse that trend. In the process of making suggestions to the Planning Commission during the process of the zoning update, there were a number of instances where we were told that our concerns were not a zoning issue. And fair enough, a fair criticism. We threw a lot of ideas at them, and to their credit, I think they read every single one of them. So I would like to make the following suggestions, as this might be a better forum. Adopt a resolution protecting every tree on public property and specifying the enforcement of those protections. Adopt a resolution, even if non-binding, that the utilities in this city operate in a way to begin to use route optimization in their network of utility poles, and that undergrounding be the preferred option. As a Reddit comment I read today noted, this could solve 3 problems with one solution: fix our broken energy grid, address our ADA non-compliant sidewalks, and save our urban canopy. 3, adopt a resolution giving the urban forester stop work authority, the same as the zoning administrator or fire marshal, so that when they see, and it is a when, we have seen this, when they see developers or builders operating in a way that will damage public trees, or trees that have been designated for protection in their site plan, that an immediate intervention can be made to protect those resources or city assets. 4, adopt a resolution to create a Get a Tree program where the residents can request a tree or suggest locations for a tree. And 5, adopt a resolution to create a city tree nursery and sawmill to account for the entire life cycle of a tree. And allow the community to benefit from the city's timber resources to help support the aforementioned Get a Tree program. I know that the city sometimes, I think in most of the resolutions at the top, you mentioned, increasing public trust in the work that you guys do. And I know that that's an incredibly important part of what you do, given some of the things that were said about taxes earlier. I know that the public is skeptical at baseline. So I think that this is one avenue where you can really make a change.
Tyler, do you want to say more about what some of these scenarios?
I do. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm just blanking on this, but yeah, thanks. So we had a study through Planet Geo, and it assessed our urban canopy currently at about 38%. When we dove into the methodology of that study, we came to find that we didn't really agree with that number. We found that they were not able to differentiate between actual tree canopy and things like invasive species that were growing on trees. So if you have kudzu growing on a tree, that would count towards the canopy in that number, which obviously is not what we're going for. So our and Mikesha will tell you a little bit more about this later, but we did get a grant to try to get a better assessment. But based on our informed opinion and that of the urban forester, we think that number is probably closer to 25%. So that definitely changes things a little bit. Now, if we go back to this slide, this is the current and past plantings that we have done of 2-inch caliber trees and then seedlings and saplings in the last 2 years. You can see a huge difference in the last year or two since our urban forester came on board, and since we were able to get funding for some invasive work. That number, though, if you look at, even if you include the hypothetical 2024 projected, let's say we do 1,000 seedlings and 181 trees, compare that to this list where it's showing what different scenarios we have for planting. We maybe are somewhere between the business as usual planting trend and the maintaining the urban canopy. So we're either losing ground or we're just barely treading water. And that is, that is tough, a tough pill to swallow.
I'm sorry to, or would you prefer questions at the end or as you go?
Please.
So for the seedling saplings, is that targeted just on city properties, parks, or is that in partnership with private homeowners?
This is all public land.
And I'm just curious kind of what, if any, limit there is if we're just doing public land to how many can be planted before we just run up to the end of that kind of acreage?
Yeah, I think a better way to answer that question would be our stated goal in the comprehensive plan is to have an urban canopy of 45%. That number is not achievable only on public land.
Right.
So we have to begin to involve private homeowners and private land.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So, I'm sorry, but I wasn't sure if you were taking questions, but you mentioned something before that, you mentioned route optimization or something like that?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a great question.
About 100 years ago, a guy named... No, this is good.
Lord.
About 100 years ago, a guy named John Pandapis, he handled the electrification of a neighborhood in Blacksburg, and I know we like to compare ourselves to Blacksburg as much as we can. And he said, instead of putting a utility pole in front of every house where we need to make a connection, why don't we put an easement between lots so that two houses can connect to the same pole, or maybe four? We didn't do that in Charlottesville. So we have a utility pole on every side of every lot, almost. And it is highly inefficient. And it's absolutely detrimental to the urban canopy. So that is just one of many suggestions. Even if you can't do anything because of the Dillon rule, we can at least say we would like to do something if that weren't in place.
Thank you.
Tyler is speaking about the projections over the next couple of decades, putting us somewhere in between, and I'm pretty sure closer to business as usual than to maintaining canopy. I acknowledge the daunting aspects of that, given that it looks like, based on Planet Geo data, we'd be looking at about 13% canopy loss in 2050. I think that in our report and in this presentation, we're more moved by the capacity for relief that is possible. And I think that's the tone that the report also takes on when talking through some of these ecological co-benefits that everyone in the city and in this room stands to be on the receiving end of. I want to talk a little bit about the groundwork for that kind of breadth of ecological work. And I'll start with some of Stephen Gaines's leadership. The Tree Commission, as you all know, doesn't have paid staff or budgeting or funding that moves through our work. And so a lot of the times the work that we do picks up on or supports Steve's work plan and priorities and tries to work at the pace of the work happening in the city. And so, for example, when I think about the groundwork that Steve has set, I'm thinking about the IRA Inflation Reduction Grant. That is a grant for $150,000. What I think is notable about that is that the updates to the forest management plan are in service of comprehensive plan goals, strategic plan goals around addressing urban tree canopy, around addressing both increasing density and increasing canopy, and seeing those as work that can happen, entangled, albeit, but alongside each other. When I was looking at the other Virginia projects that are being funded in that IRA grant, a lot of the work that is being funded at $6, $5, $4, $1 million is more or less the implementation of actually putting those trees on the ground, compared to the $150K that goes into the planning grant and the report grant here. So part of what I'm getting at is that a lot of what we do as a commission is try to support Steve's work plan, and some of that work long overdue happening across the city, knowing that in order to actually reach the categories or the scenarios that do maintain or expand canopy, we need to see the investments that actually match the scale of the trees that we want to see put on the ground. Alongside the Inflation Reduction Act work, some of Steve's work plan and grounding of what is a more vigorous canopy has looked like taking on some of the preservation, felling, and management along the downtown mall and other city parks, trails, and right-of-way. Some of that looks like removing unwanted species. I'll follow up the language of invasive species, as I know is formal language. But making room and thinking about what happens if the plants that we pull down that are invasive and are unwanted bring down the canopy. What does it look like to put more trees that are wanted there as well, while also removing some of the ash trees, dead standing trees, or diseased trees around town? And so I name all of this work to name that Steve, as the urban forester, is working on a small team where the intention of the work is below the scale that the Tree Commission is recommending needs to be pushed, and that the Tree Commission spends most of its time trying to support that work plan and is generally more reactive than creative in the ways that we are thinking about the canopy. I see this conversation as a real attempt to shift the energy and to really ask for the investment that meets the scale of the need and of the breadth. A lot of folks tonight are speaking about the need for relief, and so I want to talk briefly about some of the work the Commission does across its zones, education, and arbor committees, subcommittees. Some of that has looked like active participation in citywide and community-wide projects. Some of that on the back end, where I have been on the arbor committee, looks like supporting the documents and the tools, not to mention the state of the forest, and building out comprehensive tree lists that support the site planning. At this point, I believe the Tree Commission also sees a real need for a kind of public practice and broad coalition of support that's not exclusively based in volunteers, somewhat like myself, who have surplus time and surplus capacity. And so alongside Arbor Day celebrations, tabling, and basic opportunities for public learning and participation, I really think that part of our work also is setting the groundwork for a real neighborhood by neighborhood approach to some of how we build relationships and take on some of the private property, which I believe is about 75 or 80% of the trees in town, knowing that most trees in Charlottesville are actually not on city-managed property. And when I talk about the relationships and these surpluses of capacity and time, I'm really talking about the volunteer and community efforts, Relief Seaville, Ravenna Conservation Alliance, the Charlottesville Area Tree Stewards, all of the organizations that are a part of this sort of deputized fleet of folks trying to keep trees alive and vigorous, and nervous systems similarly alive and vigorous in Charlottesville. I've been going back often to Charlottesville's recent heat mitigation and adaptation guidebook and thinking about when we talk about the mitigation and adaptation strategies that we look toward, that preserving trees and planting more trees are not only high on the co-benefits, but are also really critical priorities of Parks and Rec, of the comprehensive plan, of the climate plan. And part of what I think our current position is for the remainder of this fiscal year and the coming one is to really align our investment and our staffing such that preserving trees and planting trees in this sort of 10-year range of time needed to actually receive benefit gets to be in alignment. My background is in community-controlled food systems as a writer and member of community, and so I really do believe that despite the capacity and the time and the heart of the volunteers that make up the Tree Commission, that a lot of the work in terms of a healthy arbor in Charlottesville is as useful and supportive as the resources and the capacity that is invested in the trees and the folks who manage them. So our recommendations are to fully fund the Urban Forester CIP request, and with it being okay to say to also fund a request that accounts for the scenario that the city of Charlottesville and Parks and Rec is most invested in seeing. What I like about the scenarios is that there are options, and doing what we've been doing is always an option. And so I think the more that we decide to proactively seek out the kind of canopy we want, we get to make the investment that matches that. For me, I think that looks somewhat like recommitting the investment in the CIP areas that are annual, such as urban tree planting, and knowing that if we want double the trees across the canopy, that might look like double the commitment. And I say that knowing that that money comes from where it comes from, and that in some ways I know that this work is entangled in the work of taxes and infrastructure. We've talked a bit about the amount of trees that are on private property, and continuously the Commission's work feels like it is working toward the kind of activities, relationships, investments, incentives that we can mobilize around, such that where the vast majority of trees are, there is work that is happening. And I think unless Tyler has more to add, we will take what folks feel, council members, you all have to offer or ask.
Any questions? Or?
Yeah, just a couple, and thank you for the presentation and information. And at the budget work session you mentioned, I just say it again because I think it's important, the recognition that growth and density don't have to be in opposition to growing the tree canopy. Richmond's had success growing their tree canopy while experiencing population growth, much less the examples of cities around the world that typically do a lot better than the U.S., some of them, in terms of tree canopy. So I guess I'm trying to understand kind of what we could, where we can practically go from the information you've provided. And just in my mind, it sounds like one is we need to at least quadruple the number of tree plantings. So that would practically mean quadrupling the amount in the budget annually for tree plantings. And then you mentioned budget and staff key positions. Is there a known list, or what would those positions be? How many would they be? Would they be part-time, full-time?
Sure. I'm Steve Gaines. I think a lot.
Microphone for the people at home. Thanks, Steve.
So as far as additional staff, I am allowed a seasonal. Certainly, I guess a technician under me. A full-time would be great. I think eventually, particularly with the way tree permits are going and growing pressure from the development incentives, a forester for NDS and a forester for Parks and Recreation. Someone that's going to be able to handle the tree permits, and someone that's going to be able to handle development site plan review, that sort of thing, because I think those are only going to increase and become more time consuming.
So 2 FTEs in building to that capacity.
More or less, yes, sir.
When it comes to the incentives for plantings on private property, what is the role for us as council in terms of what could we do that practically helps that work?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of points there. I think that, Steve has mentioned having the capacity to have a nursery, however formal or informal, that would help facilitate that work. There is significant community support to, either donate trees or donate time that could, account for whatever portion of a budget doesn't cover that. I also think that there is room for that to be potentially, in some way, revenue generating to the point that it may help offset the cost. So if we're selling those trees, or if we're selling wood that's harvested from old trees that are cut down, that we're able to turn into slabs, that can be valuable as a resource to the city. So I think that there are options there, but again, I don't know what the legal situation would be for you guys actually funding trees directly on private property. I just don't know.
Mm-hmm. And the final question I have is, I haven't had a chance to track it in great detail, but I know the General Assembly this year has passed a number of bills, local option bills, giving all localities more authority around tree regulations. Is that something you all have tracked comprehensively and will come back to us just, hey, you now have this new legal authority to take advantage of these new powers?
Absolutely. We're definitely following it. Some of them have been codified into law. Some of them were unfortunately vetoed. The English Ivy bill comes to mind as being vetoed, but we can definitely give you a report on that.
Yeah. Again, thank you. I'll just say, obviously, for this budget cycle, it's too late for a lot of these more significant changes. But I think as soon, in anticipation of next budget cycle, like the earlier we can get specific numbers to council about tree planting FTEs, I think just increases the odds it'll be incorporated into the budget.
And if I could just add one more point, I do want to highlight that in the report, the commission does support increased density. They did support the zoning. We do believe in that very much. It's just making those things coexist is a matter of effort.
Right, we have to be intentional.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when we got the report, I guess a few months ago, about the trees on the downtown wall that they had to cut down because of the heat source, that really just hurt me, and I know we're taking care of that now with permits, but that is one of the things that people value in the city, not just trees on the downtown wall, but just trees in general. So I agree that if we can get the information earlier next year, that is something that the community supports.
I don't have much to add, just that I also am appreciative of the fact that density and trees do go together. I recently was driving up 29, and just the amount of clear cutting that's going on up there because of sprawl, because there's not enough space in the city for people to live, it contributes to that. So, a tree anywhere is valuable. So seeing that as a result of not enough housing opportunities in the city, partly, is tough. And I also want to voice my support for street trees wherever possible. Not only is it good for cooling things down, it also slows cars down. And if you plant them in between the streets and the sidewalk, it protects pedestrians. So I'm looking forward to hopefully see more of that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I got no.
Thank you for volunteering your time to do this. It is greatly appreciated and valued. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
And congratulations on your incoming chairship.
Thank you. Our first meeting is tomorrow with me as chairship and Susan McKinnon as vice chair. And my thesis is due tonight.
Congratulations on that.
A lot gets to happen.
All right.
Thanks.
And you're
Thanks
here.
for being
Good
here.
luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, see you later.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, sir. The next item on the agenda is, I just want to make sure, is time for the community matters that at the end of the meeting. So is anyone who would like to speak? Yes. 3 minutes, and state your name and residence, please.
Hello, my
Hello.
name is Elissa. I was here 2 weeks ago. I live on Lyons Ave in Charlottesville, and I guess I'm speaking on behalf of the many people who were here and then left. And we wanted to thank you for amplifying our voices tonight and voting yes on the ceasefire resolution. I'm going to try to keep it short because it's late for everyone. But specifically, I just wanted to say that it takes courage to change your mind, especially publicly, and we really appreciate that you did and you took the time to get the information from the people that you needed to hear it from in order to do that. And I wanted to extend an invitation to anyone else on City Council. If you have a change of heart and you want to vote differently in the future for the same resolution, like, you could put it on the agenda again and we'll all come back and we'll all applaud you when it passes unanimously. Like, it's really fine to, when you learn more, you do better, and we support that. So thank you for that. And I also just wanted to say, in addition to amplifying our voices, it seems like maybe the UN resolution gave you sort of permission to, or just the timing, I don't know what happened, but the timing of it was like, we came and then the UN resolution happened and now this resolution happens. And so I just see it as like building momentum, like giving people permission to express their support for a ceasefire or for a free Palestine in ways that maybe they didn't feel comfortable doing before. And so we're all like part of that growing movement, which will probably lead to a sustained ceasefire. And then this is like a genuine question. There was a lot of support tonight for opposing FLOC. Like, I heard a lot of people speak out against it for a variety of reasons I'm not going to repeat. And then there was a gentleman who was like, it sounds like it's already a done deal, and it seemed like you know him, so maybe you can answer this question. But like, if Flock is a done deal because a donor came in with a bunch of money and just wanted to do it, like, how do we prevent that from happening in the future? And then also, like, maybe it's not a done deal, and what can we do to stop it? Because you saw we packed it, and we could pack it again if that would help. But I'm guessing there's like other ways, especially other ways maybe you all would prefer. So can you answer that question? Or
We're still taking public comment. So, I mean, we did get some people tonight to come out and speak, but and the chief, got comments from other people as well, and we're going to do a pilot for 1 year.
So the pilot part is a done deal.
And just to answer very quickly, 4 p.m. we had a work session, the chief presented. It wasn't a formal vote, but we did a straw poll. Myself, Councilor Oshwin did not support implementing it. A majority did, so it will be implemented at this point.
The pilot program will be implemented.
Okay, gotcha. Maybe I'll just send you 2 follow-up emails because I have questions. Thank you so much.
Anyone else like to speak?
Yeah, Don Gathers again, City. I want to thank you, Vice Mayor, for your reconsideration. I also needed to take a moment, and as I think I misstated something earlier, my taxes did not go up $56,000.
I was wondering.
The assessment was what I meant to say. Went up $56,000 over a 2-year period. Otherwise, I would be standing in your doorway with a cup in my hand. I stood here, as I said, 6.5 years ago. Well, actually, I stood there. And I pointed at Mike, I pointed at Kathy, and I told them, and then later I pointed at Bob Fenwick, and I told them that you did not want to be on the wrong side of history with these votes. I'm fearful that that's where Mayor Wade, you're going to land, former Mayor Snook, that's where you're going to land. It's been passed, so I'm not going to continue to ride that horse off into the sunset, but just know that words have both meaning and power. Okay? I guess that you can look at it as being akin to if I stand in my driveway and I give my neighbor a gun and that neighbor then goes out and commits a crime, I'm still subsequently liable for what happened. It's in essence the same thing that's going on with the U.S. and the weapons that we're sending off to foreign countries. So just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Hello. Hi, Mayor
Hello.
and councilors. Just a quick thank you for passing the resolution. I really appreciate that. I also wanted to say that I do oppose the Flock pilot program, which I guess is going forward. I feel like we really don't need any more surveillance. And then the third thing, just to put on your radar, and I know it's probably too late for this budget session, for this budget season, but I want to talk about pay parity between our public defenders and our prosecutors, which does not exist. So, for instance, starting salary for our public defenders, this is the Albemarle Charlottesville Public Defender's Office, is about $73,000, which is more than it was a year ago. But for prosecutors in the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, it's about $92,000. And unfortunately, we're losing, as I understand from the Public Defender's Office, we're losing folks who want to be public defenders but can't afford to live here on that salary and going over to the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. And I know that you all have allocated some money in the budget to around $100,000, I think, to help get public defenders up, but it's not enough. And I think we really need to be funding the folks that are defending our most vulnerable citizens, and they should be making the same amount that our prosecutors make. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't get the name.
Sorry, I didn't. I'm Lisa Drain. I'm a city resident.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Council. I want to talk about how y'all voted to build this big elaborate jail. And you know, no matter what we come down here and we say, y'all still do what y'all want to do. What bothers me more than anything is the fact that the lies that were told. There were so many lies that was being told in those rooms, along with the masturbating man. Nothing happened. And I was told that nothing could happen. They couldn't track who this man was. You didn't do anything about the lies. The other thing that bothered me was when you, Mayor, said that black people commit more crimes than anybody. And it's probably true because everything we do is against the law. I think it's so unfair now that we have cameras. So what I want to say to my black and brown people, watch out, because we're going to catch hell now. We have cameras everywhere. We're being watched constantly. Our people is being over-incarcerated. There's a young man right now that's headed to prison, and he's a child that committed a crime. And I know exactly what's going to happen to him because I received calls from people from prison complaining about the conditions. So I want to say to y'all, shame on y'all to even support a building of a jail when you said that the recidivism was down, but yet and still you still want to build this jail to over-incarcerate people. I think it's a sin and a shame. And I want to say this to y'all. Some of y'all may get it, but what profit a man if he gained the whole world and he loses his own soul? I think that you really need to think about that because a lot of y'all don't know that whatever you do here is going to follow you. I'm really, really upset because we come down here and we practically beg y'all, like Carol say, to do right by us, but you don't. So whatever y'all do to us and whatever y'all put in place to over-incarcerate us, whatever you put in place, it's going to follow you. So you may want to think about how you vote. And when they give you something, please read it instead of voting with everybody else because y'all was voted in. And once again, I'm going to say it's a sin and a shame how y'all do us, man. Y'all totally disrespectful to us. No matter how many meetings we go in, no matter how many times we complain to y'all, y'all already know what y'all want to do. Y'all already know how y'all going to treat us. And I'm going to say it again, shame on y'all.
Anyone else like to speak? Thank you. We stand adjourned.